Hi, it's Carrie here at Barefoot Consultants, and I want to welcome you to another one of what I'm calling kind of a mini training video. And these come out once a month in the newsletter. So I try in 8 minutes or less to teach you something or tell you something that's valuable related to the course. So here we go. Today, what I'm going to cover is the 5 most frequently asked questions I get when people enter the course. And by far, kind of the #1 question that I get is it actually possible to teach English if you don't speak the language of your students? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. The majority of teachers of English around the world do not speak the language of their students. The majority of native speakers, I should say, because actually the majority of teachers of English around the world don't even have English as their first language. It's a second language or a third language. So you have a distinct advantage if you are a native English speaker, but there's no disadvantage to not speaking the language of your students. So let me really quickly illustrate the point here, because I think this really puts it into perspective. Imagine the country that you're living in, if it's an English-speaking country, and think about the teachers who are teaching immigrants to your country how to speak English. Now, chances are they have a very mixed bag of cultures and languages that they're dealing with in a class like that. And certainly, very few teachers on the planet are going to be able to speak 9 or 10 or 12 or 15 different languages that these various students all speak. So they are using skills to teach all of these students who speak different languages the skill of listening, reading, writing, and speaking English. So this is entirely possible. People do it every day. And a lot of times, the employer that you have does not want you speaking the native language, even if you do have the native language as one of your skills. So that's the #1 question. Let's move on to #2. #2 is age restrictions. And a lot of you have heard that there are countries around the world where if you are over a certain age, you simply cannot work there. And I want to put this also into perspective for you, is that yes, this does exist, and it exists for several different reasons in various countries. Now, I have done an entire 1-hour training program on this that you're going to find in the members area only, in the members only area with the webinar playbacks. But let me give you just a really quick hint at why this is a thing and why maybe or maybe not you should even be paying attention to it. Okay, so in Asian countries especially, this tends to come up, and in those countries, they have regulations against issuing a work visa to anybody over a certain age, whether you are a national of that country or you are a foreigner coming there to speak English. They have a mandatory retirement age, and people in that country simply do not work after that age. So while we might be used to, in our culture, working into your 70s or even your 80s, without any laws or restrictions about that, in other countries, that's not the culture, that's not the norm, and it's not the law. So you want to be aware of that this does exist in some countries, and you want to look at your top 4 or 5 target countries that you might be interested in, do some research, and find out if this will be an issue for you. Now, I want to say, I have heard, I know, have read, done the research, found out that there are age restrictions in specific countries. But then I have interviewed people who are actually working there who are over that age. So you want to go to the source. Make sure that when you do your investigation, you're looking at an embassy website, a government website for that country to find out what those restrictions really are. Now, in some cases, that only applies if you're going to be an employee of a company or a school. If you're going to be an independent private contractor, sometimes those rules don't apply. And then there's always the option to work online where there really aren't regulations of this type. So I'm going to leave it at that, and you know, if this is something that you want to know more about, you can go into the course, look at the webinar playbacks, and you'll find the one on age restrictions. The next thing that we're going to talk about is, do I have to have teaching experience to teach English abroad? And absolutely, you do not. Again, I would say the majority of people who begin teaching English around the country or around the world every year have not taught before. This is something that they have always aspired to do, they're passionate about, it's a way that they want to contribute and give back and really be a part of their new community. But they're not teachers, they don't have degrees in education, they don't have a teaching background. They may have taken some training along the way to brush up on their English teaching skill, and it is a skill, and we talk a lot about that in the course, but there are very few jobs out there that are going to require you to have a degree in teaching English as a foreign language or a degree in education. They might have some other requirements for the job, but they know that a lot of people transition into this type of work out of another career. So the fourth thing is, do I have to have a degree? Goes hand in hand with the last question, or with the last frequently asked question. And no, you do not have to have a degree in order to teach English abroad. However, again, it depends on the laws within that country for granting work visas in that country. So in some countries, they don't allow foreigners work visas if they don't have a 4-year degree. Now, there may be ways around that. There might be a partial degree and some work experience. There might be some other ways that you can do that. But what I want to do here is just encourage you to start thinking about these things and encourage you to start thinking about how are you going to do the research necessary to find out that if your preferred country where you might like to go and work has any restrictions like this. There are plenty of jobs out there for people who do not have a degree. Again, I did an entire webinar on this, so there's more than an hour's worth of content for you in the membership area for you to look at, and I give lots of tips and lots of resources for those of you who might be in the situation where you don't have a degree, ways that you can kind of shore that up and bolster your resume and still be a very appealing applicant for any job that you want to apply for. And last but not least, a lot of people ask me, do I have to be a grammar guru in order to teach English? And again, the answer is no. You don't have to be a grammar guru in order to teach English, but you certainly want to start brushing up on your grammar. No matter how you decide to teach English, I know many of you are interested in what I call coffee shop English, which is conversational English, very informal. You're just going and meeting with people, having a conversation, correcting their pronunciation, correcting their grammar. And most of us are able to do that without any sort of boning up on grammar or a grammar book beside us, for example. But if you had to describe why you made that correction, then that might be the more difficult challenge, right? Is that, well, I know that you should say it like this, but I'm not sure I could teach you why you should say it like that. So while you don't have to be a grammar guru, and many of your students will definitely have the fundamentals of grammar down, you want to know that, yeah, grammar is a part of teaching English. That's just kind of, part of the territory here. And I know I don't feel 100% confident all the time in my English grammar skills, even though I have been a successful English teacher and tutor. But we live in the real world, and while we learned grammar through listening and repeating after people. And yeah, we all had grammar in school, and we've all done the sentence mapping, and we can probably identify the difference between an adjective and an adverb. But the truth is, when it comes to describing what a past participle is, or the difference between passive and active voice when you're writing and reading, ooh, that starts to get a little deep, right? Well, maybe I need to brush up on that. So you don't have to be a grammar guru, but you want to be comfortable and you want to be confident as a teacher. And part of doing that is going to be taking some time, maybe taking a certification course, which we talk a lot about in the Speak English and Get Paid course. And that's going to give you the skills that you need to really be confident when you start teaching. So there you have it. Those are the 5 most frequently asked questions and the answers that I provide for people when they ask those questions. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And if it's brought up any questions in your mind or doubts that you might have, write me in support@barefootconsultants.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. And know that all of these topics that I just talked about, I have done individual webinars on, and you can find those in the Insiders Access member only part of the page, where you can go in and look through a myriad of webinars that I've done in the past. So have a great week, everybody, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on our live training webinar.